Dr. Kira Patel stood in her pristine medical bay aboard the Centauri space station, her six-fingered hands hovering over the most perplexing patient she'd encountered in her 15 years of xenomedicine. The creature before her was small, covered in orange and white fur, and according to her scans, was producing continuous muscular vibrations that defied every principle of energy conservation she'd ever studied. "You say this is normal?" she asked Commander James Wilson, who stood nearby with an amused expression on his face. Her translator implant struggled to maintain the proper tone of professional detachment she strived for. "Completely normal," Wilson replied, reaching out to scratch behind the creature's ears. "Butterscotch here is just happy. All cats purr when they're content." Dr. Patel's cranial ridges flickered with blue bioluminescence, a sign of intense concentration among her species. She treated silicon-based lifeforms that breathed nitrogen, creatures that could regenerate entire limbs, and even beings that existed partially in other dimensions. But nothing had prepared her for the seemingly illogical behavior of an Earth cat. "Commander, according to these readings, your butterscotch is expending approximately 0.3 kilocalories per hour maintaining these vibrations. There is no apparent biological benefit. No defensive purpose. No communication signal being transmitted. It's simply vibrating." The cat in question rolled onto its side, stretched luxuriously, and increased the volume of its purring. Dr. Patel's medical scanner registered the change immediately, and her ridges pulsed faster with confusion. "That's because you're thinking about it wrong, Doc," Wilson said, his dark eyes twinkling. "Not everything has to have a survival purpose. Sometimes things just feel good." Dr. Patel's secondary eyelids flickered rapidly, her species equivalent of a frown. "Commander, I've studied comparative xenobiology for 2 decades. Every evolved trait serves a purpose. Every biological function exists because it provided some advantage to the species. Maybe the advantage is happiness," Wilson suggested, watching as Butterscotch began kneading the examination table with her paws, purring even louder. Dr. Patel found herself reaching out with one of her hands, hesitating just above the cat's fur. Wilson nodded encouragingly, and she gently placed her palm against the vibrating creature. The sensation was unexpected. The rhythmic vibrations traveled up her arm, and she noticed her own bioluminescence shifting to a softer purple hue, a color her species associated with relaxation. "Fascinating," she whispered, her scientific curiosity overtaking her initial skepticism. "The vibrations appear to have a calming effect on my own nervous system. Perhaps there is more to investigate here than I initially assumed." Over the next few hours, Dr. Patel ran every non-invasive scan she could think of on Butterscotch, who seemed entirely unbothered by the attention. She documented the exact frequency of the purring, its variations based on different stimuli, and the cat's vital signs throughout. What she found only deepened the mystery. "The energy expenditure is consistent," she explained to Wilson, who had stayed to observe her growing fascination. "But there's something else. When your cat purrs, there are subtle changes in its brain chemistry. Increased production of neurotransmitters associated with pleasure, reduced stress hormones, and a marked decrease in inflammatory markers." "So you're saying purring is good for them?" Wilson asked, watching as Butterscotch dozed contentedly on the examination table. "It appears to be beneficial, yes, but that doesn't explain." Dr. Patel trailed off as her scanner picked up something new. "Commander, are you aware that the frequency of your cat's purring falls within a range known to promote tissue regeneration in several species?" Wilson blinked. "No, but that's incredible. Though I'm not surprised, cats are pretty magical creatures." Dr. Patel's ridges flickered between blue and purple as she processed this statement. "Magic is not a scientific concept, Commander." "Maybe not," Wilson replied with a laugh, "but spend enough time around cats, and you might start to wonder. They've been living alongside humans for thousands of years, and we still haven't figured them out completely." As if to emphasize his point, Butterscotch chose that moment to stand up, stretch elegantly, and leap directly into Dr. Patel's arms. The alien physician froze, her ridges flashing in surprise as the cat settled against her chest, purring contentedly. "I believe," Dr. Patel said slowly, her scientific detachment warring with a strange new feeling as the vibrations resonated through her torso, "that I may need to conduct a more thorough study of Earth's companion animals. For medical purposes, of course." Wilson smiled knowingly. Of course, document. Though I should warn you, once a cat chooses you, there's no going back to purely logical explanations of the universe. As Butterscotch's purring filled the medical bay, Dr. Patel found herself wondering if perhaps that wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. Word of Dr. Patel's interest in Earth animals spread quickly through the Centauri space station. Within days of her first encounter with Butterscotch, her medical bay began receiving visits from other human crew members and their companions. Each new animal presented its own set of puzzling behaviors that challenged her understanding of biological efficiency. Today, she found herself examining a golden retriever named Max, belonging to Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez from the station's engineering department. The dog's tail wagged continuously, creating what Dr. Patel's instruments registered as an unnecessary expenditure of energy. "Lieutenant, your creature appears to be suffering from an involuntary muscular spasm," Dr. Patel noted, her ridges pulsing with concern as she studied her readings. Rodriguez laughed, running her hand through Max's golden fur. "That's just wagging, Doctor. It means he's happy to meet you." "Another happiness indication." Dr. Patel's secondary eyelids flickered rapidly. "Like the cat's vibrations?" "Exactly." Rodriguez confirmed. "Different animals show it differently, but they all have ways of expressing joy." Dr. Patel's research notes were becoming increasingly complex. She documented various seemingly inefficient behaviors: dogs wagging tails, rabbits binky-ing, parrots mimicking human speech patterns, and cats continuing to perplex her with their wide range of vocalizations. None of these behaviors served any apparent survival purpose, yet they all seemed integral to the animal's well-being. Her confusion deepened when she discovered that these companions appeared to have significant effects on their human owner's physiology as well. Her scans showed decreased cortisol levels, lowered blood pressure, and increased oxytocin production in humans during interactions with their pets. "Fascinating," she muttered, watching as Max rested his head on Rodriguez's lap. "The neural synchronization between you is remarkable." "He knows when I'm sad," Rodriguez explained, scratching behind Max's ears. "After long shifts, especially the tough ones, he's always there. Sometimes I think he understands me better than my human friends do." Dr. Patel's ridges shifted to a deep blue of concentration. "You attribute emotional awareness to this creature, despite its relatively simple neural structure?" "Simple." Rodriguez smiled. "Max here can recognize over 100 words, read human emotions, and knows exactly when someone needs comfort." "That doesn't seem simple to me." As if to demonstrate, Max suddenly stood up and walked over to Dr. Patel, pressing his nose against her hand. Her readings showed her own stress levels decreasing at the contact, despite her attempts to maintain scientific objectivity. Later that evening, Dr. Patel sat in her office, surrounded by holographic displays of her research data. Her colleague, Dr. Nexvas, a towering insectoid xenobiologist, had joined her to review the findings. "This is highly irregular, Kira," Nexvas clicked, their antennae twitching with concern. "You're one of our most respected xenomedical practitioners. Why waste time studying these primitive emotional responses?" "Primitive?" Dr. Patel's ridges flickered with mild irritation. "These creatures have developed sophisticated social bonds that transcend species barriers. Their behaviors, while seemingly inefficient, appear to serve complex psychological and physiological purposes we don't yet understand." She pulled up a series of brain scans showing the neural patterns of various Earth animals during interactions with humans. "Look at these synchronization patterns. They're achieving something we've never seen before, a form of cross-species emotional resonance that has measurable health benefits for both parties." "Emotional resonance is not medicine," Nexvas insisted, their mandibles clicking dismissively. "We deal in quantifiable biological processes, not feelings." "But what if feelings are quantifiable biological processes?" Dr. Patel challenged, bringing up another set of scans. These are hormone levels in both humans and their animal companions during various interactions. The patterns are consistent, reproducible, and show clear health benefits. Before Nexvas could respond, they were interrupted by a soft meow. Butterscotch had somehow found her way into the office and was now weaving between Dr. Patel's legs, purring loudly. Case in point, Dr. Patel said, reaching down to stroke the cat. Commander Wilson's companion appears to have adopted me as well. And despite my initial skepticism, I find her presence beneficial to my thought processes. Nexvas's antennae twitched rapidly, their species equivalent of an exasperated sigh. You've gone native, Kira. These Earth creatures are compromising your scientific objectivity. Or perhaps, Dr. Patel suggested, watching as Butterscotch settled contentedly in her lap, they're helping me expand it. There's more to medicine than cellular repair and surgical procedures. These animals seem to have mastered a form of healing we've never considered. As if to emphasize her point, her ridges began glowing with the soft purple of relaxation as Butterscotch's purring resonated through her body. Nexvas watched this display with growing concern, their antennae now practically vibrating with agitation. The medical board will not approve of this research direction, they warned. You're risking your reputation on a theory that emotions and animal behaviors have medical significance. Dr. Patel stroked Butterscotch thoughtfully, her ridges pulsing with determination. Then perhaps it's time for the medical board to expand their definition of medicine. Because something is happening here, something we've been too focused on pure biological efficiency to notice. And I intend to understand exactly what it is. The emergency alert blared through the Centauri space station at 0300 hours, jolting Dr. Patel awake in her quarters. A maintenance accident in the lower engineering decks had left 3 crew members injured, including Lieutenant Rodriguez. As Dr. Patel rushed to the medical bay, she found herself faced with an unexpected complication. Max, Rodriguez's golden retriever, refused to leave his owner's side. The dog must be removed, Dr. Zaref, the station's chief medical officer, insisted. His crystalline form pulsed with red urgency patterns. We cannot maintain proper sterility with an Earth animal present. But as they tried to separate Max from Rodriguez, the lieutenant's vital signs began to destabilize. Dr. Patel's scanner showed immediate spikes in stress hormones and blood pressure. Wait, Dr. Patel called out, her ridges flickering rapidly with realization. Look at these readings. She projected a holographic display of Rodriguez's neural patterns. The dog's presence is actually stabilizing her condition. That's absurd, Zareth's crystalline surface rippled with dismissal. Animal companionship cannot influence medical outcomes. My research suggests otherwise, Dr. Patel argued, bringing up comparative scans. The emotional bond between them has measurable physiological effects. Removing Max could complicate her recovery. Before Zareth could object further, Rodriguez's hand found Max's fur, and the medical readouts immediately showed improvement. Heart rate stabilizing, stress hormones decreasing, neural patterns settling into healthier rhythms. Fascinating, Dr. Patel murmured, recording every detail. The synchronization is even stronger during physical distress. Over the next several hours, as they treated Rodriguez's injuries, Dr. Patel carefully documented the impact of Max's presence. The dog seemed to instinctively know when to offer closer contact and when to give space, each interaction reflected in the patient's vital signs. Word of the incident spread quickly through the station's medical community. By the time Dr. Patel presented her findings at the weekly medical conference, the amphitheater was packed with curious and skeptical alien physicians. These readings are unprecedented, she explained, displaying complex neural maps across the room's holographic system. The emotional bond between humans and their animal companions creates a unique healing environment. We're seeing accelerated recovery rates, improved pain management, and enhanced emotional stability. "This is not medicine," declared Dr. Nexvas from the front row, their antennae rigid with disapproval. "It's anthropomorphic wishful thinking." "Is it?" Dr. Patel challenged, bringing up new data. "Look at these tissue regeneration rates. The frequencies generated by feline purring, which I initially dismissed as wasteful, fall exactly within the range that promotes healing in multiple species. This isn't coincidence, it's evolved symbiosis." The room erupted in clicking, humming, and crystalline chiming as various alien species debated among themselves. Dr. Zaratha's surface blazed with skeptical patterns. "You suggest we should integrate Earth animals into our medical protocols?" he asked incredulously. "Based on emotional responses and unproven theories? I suggest we're ignoring a powerful healing tool because it doesn't fit our preconceptions," Dr. Patel responded. Her ridges pulsed with passionate blues and purples. "Look at this." She played a time-lapse recording of Rodriguez's recovery. The improvement in her condition whenever Max was present was undeniable. The dog's presence correlated with better sleep patterns, reduced pain medication requirements, and accelerated healing. "But the implications are disturbing," another physician chittered from the back. "If emotional bonds have such significant medical impact, our entire approach to healing may be incomplete," Dr. Patel finished. "Yes. That's exactly what I'm suggesting." The debate raged for hours, but Dr. Patel stood firm. She'd compiled too much evidence to back down now. As the conference wound down, she returned to her medical bay to find Butterscotch waiting for her, along with Commander Wilson. "Heard you caused quite a stir," Wilson said, smiling as Butterscotch immediately jumped into Dr. Patel's arms. "The medical community is resistant to change," she admitted, unconsciously relaxing as the cat's purring resonated through her chest. Her ridges shifted to soothing purple patterns. "You know," Wilson observed, "for someone who started out skeptical of inefficient animal behaviors, you seem pretty comfortable with them now." Dr. Patel looked down at Butterscotch, remembering her initial confusion over the cat's purring. "Perhaps that's the most compelling evidence of all," she mused. "Even those of us trained to value pure biological efficiency can't resist the healing power of these connections." As if in agreement, Butterscotch's purring intensified, and Dr. Patel felt her own bioluminescence synchronizing with the rhythm. She had more battles ahead, the medical board would not be easily convinced, and her research still faced significant opposition. But watching Rodriguez recover with Max by her side, feeling her own stress ease with Butterscotch's presence, she knew she was onto something revolutionary. The universe, she was learning, had room for both logic and emotion, efficiency and comfort, science and connection. Perhaps understanding that balance was the greatest medical breakthrough of all. The Centauri space station shuddered as another gravitational wave hit. A nearby star had gone supernova, and while the station was safely out of range, the resulting disturbances were affecting the station's more sensitive residents. Particularly the crystalline species, whose molecular structures resonated painfully with each wave. Dr. Patel's medical bay was overwhelmed with patients. Dr. Zarath was among the worst affected, his usually brilliant surface now dulled and fracturing at the edges. Traditional treatments were proving inefficient, the crystalline being's natural frequency was too disrupted for standard harmonizing procedures to work. "Their molecular cohesion is failing faster than we can stabilize it," Dr. Nexvas reported, their antennae drooping with exhaustion. "We need a solution quickly." Dr. Patel stood at her main console, reviewing readings from her latest scans when she noticed something unexpected. Her eyes darted to Butterscotch, who had taken up residence in her medical bay since the crisis began. The cat was purring continuously, as she often did when patients were present. "The frequency," Dr. Patel muttered, her ridges pulsing with sudden inspiration. "Computer, analyze the resonance pattern of feline purring against the crystalline species' natural frequency." The results appeared instantly on her screen, there was a harmonic relationship. Not perfect, but close enough that with some modification. Lieutenant Rodriguez, she called out. Bring Max to the medical bay immediately. And spread the word, I need every cat and dog on this station here as soon as possible. You cannot be serious, Dr. Zareth managed to say, his voice crackling with distortion. This is hardly the time for your animal experiments. With respect, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Patel replied, her ridges glowing with determination, this may be exactly the time. The purring frequency of cats, combined with the specific rhythmic patterns produced by dog vocalizations, could create a counterharmonic wave to stabilize your molecular structure. Within minutes, the medical bay was filled with an assortment of Earth pets and their humans. Dr. Patel worked quickly, positioning the animals in a specific pattern around the crystalline patients. She had modified several medical resonators to amplify and modulate the animals' natural frequencies. This is either brilliant or madness, Nexvas observed, watching as Dr. Patel made final adjustments to her equipment. Sometimes they're the same thing, she replied, activating the system. Now, everyone with a dog, please encourage them to vocalize. Cat owners, keep them calm and purring. The air filled with an unusual symphony, the rhythmic purring of cats, the gentle woofs and whines of dogs, all harmonized and amplified by Dr. Patel's modifications. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, the crystalline patients began to stabilize. Their surfaces, which had been dulled and fractured, slowly regained their luster. Dr. Zaratha's voice strengthened as his molecular structure realigned. The resonance, it's perfect. How did you know? I didn't, Dr. Patel admitted, monitoring the readings. But my research showed that these animals' vocalizations operated at frequencies that promoted healing across multiple species. I hypothesized that the combination of different patterns might create a stabilizing effect. As the treatment continued, Dr. Patel noticed something else. The humans in the room, who had been stressed and anxious about their crystalline colleagues, were showing improved vital signs. The alien medical staff, previously skeptical of her work, were displaying signs of relaxation across various physiological markers. It's not just the frequency, she realized, her ridges pulsing with excitement. The presence of these animals, their natural healing abilities, they're affecting everyone in the room. We're seeing a multi-species therapeutic response. Commander Wilson appeared at her side, Butterscotch cradled in his arms. Looks like your unscientific research just saved our chief medical officer, he said with a smile. Dr. Patel reached out to stroke Butterscotch, feeling the familiar comfort of her purring. Perhaps it's time we expanded our definition of science, she replied. These creatures have developed healing abilities we're only beginning to understand. Their inefficient behaviors serve purposes we never imagined. Hours later, when the crisis had passed and the crystalline patients were stable, Dr. Zareth called a meeting of the medical staff. His surface now shimmered with healthy iridescence as he addressed the room. Today's events have forced me to reconsider my position on Dr. Patel's research, he announced. What we witnessed was not just an emergency treatment, but a breakthrough in cross-species medicine. The healing potential of Earth's companion animals, combined with their effects on emotional well-being, represents a field of study we can no longer ignore. Dr. Patel felt her ridges glowing with pride and vindication. As she looked around the room, she saw nodding heads and thoughtful expressions, even Dr. Nexvas's antennae were twitching with reluctant approval. But it was the sight of Butterscotch, curled up contentedly on her desk, that brought the most satisfaction. The cat's purring, once a mysterious waste of energy to her scientific mind, now represented something far more profound, a reminder that the universe's greatest mysteries often came wrapped in the simplest packages. Six months after the gravitational wave crisis, the Centauri space station's medical bay had undergone a remarkable transformation. What was once a sterile, purely clinical environment now included dedicated spaces for animal-assisted healing. Dr. Patel stood in her office, her ridges glowing with quiet satisfaction as she reviewed the latest results of her expanded research program. Dr. Patel. A soft chime announced the arrival of Dr. Zareth, his crystalline surface now permanently modified to accommodate regular therapeutic sessions with the station's companion animals. The Galactic Medical Council representatives have arrived for the presentation. She nodded, gathering her data tablets. This was the moment that would determine whether her breakthrough would remain a station curiosity or become a revolutionary change in space medicine. As she walked to the conference hall, Butterscotch trotted alongside her, having long since appointed herself as Dr. Patel's permanent medical assistant. The conference hall was packed with representatives from every major spacefaring species. Dr. Patel recognized the floating gas clouds of the nebulons, the silicon-based crystalline forms like Dr. Zareth, and even the rarely seen quantum state beings from the Helix cluster. All had come to witness what they'd heard called either a miracle or a madness of modern medicine. Distinguished colleagues, Dr. Patel began, her ridges pulsing with confident blues and purples. 6 months ago, I stood here arguing for the medical validity of emotional connections and animal companionship. Today, I present not theories, but results. The holographic displays came to life around her, showing comprehensive data from hundreds of cases. We've documented a 43% increase in recovery rates across all species when animal-assisted healing is incorporated into treatment protocols. The effects are particularly pronounced in cases involving trauma, chronic pain, and psychological distress. She brought up footage from various treatment sessions. A Nebulan child, whose gas form had been destabilized by cosmic radiation, being gradually restored to health through regular interactions with a purring cat. A quantum state being learning to maintain coherence by synchronizing with the steady rhythm of a dog's heartbeat. But perhaps most significantly, she continued, we've discovered that these healing effects are not limited to the patients themselves. New data streams appeared, showing the improved health metrics of the medical staff, the reduced stress levels throughout the station, and the overall increase in community well-being. The presence of Earth's companion animals has created what we now call a healing ecosystem. Their seemingly inefficient behaviors, the purring, the wagging, the physical displays of affection, generate cascading positive effects throughout our entire community. Dr. Nexvas, who had become one of her strongest supporters after witnessing the results firsthand, stepped forward to share their observations. We've documented novel neural patterns forming in both patients and medical staff. Cross-species empathy is no longer just a theoretical concept, we can now measure and enhance it. Commander Wilson, sitting in the front row with a new kitten in his lap, couldn't help but smile. The station's pet population had tripled since Dr. Patel's breakthrough, with even the most logic-driven species requesting animal companions for their medical benefits. We are not suggesting replacing traditional medicine, Dr. Patel clarified, as Butterscotch wound between her feet. Rather, we propose integrating emotional and physical healing in ways we never considered possible. The creatures we once dismissed as inefficient have become our teachers in the art of holistic medicine. The presentation continued with detailed protocols, training programs, and implementation strategies. But the most powerful moment came when Dr. Zareth shared his personal testimony about the gravitational wave crisis. I was trained to believe that medicine was purely about biological processes, he said, his surface shimmering with emotion patterns. Now I understand that healing happens on multiple levels simultaneously. These Earth animals, with their seemingly illogical behaviors, have taught us that efficiency isn't always about conserving energy, sometimes it's about sharing it. As the council members deliberated, Dr. Patel felt a familiar vibration against her legs. She looked down to see Butterscotch purring contentedly, completely unconcerned with the momentous decisions being made. The cat who had started it all still saw the universe in simple terms: comfort given was comfort received, healing offered was healing returned. The council's decision was unanimous. Animal-assisted healing would be integrated into standard medical protocols throughout known space. Training programs would be established, research funding allocated, and new facilities designed to accommodate what they were calling the Earth-animal factor in medical treatment. Later that evening, Dr. Patel sat in her office, Butterscotch in her lap, reflecting on how far they'd come. Her ridges glowed with the soft purple of contentment as she remembered her initial confusion over the cat's purring. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she murmured to Butterscotch, who responded with an increase in purring volume. That sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't about fixing what's broken, but about creating connections that make us whole. Commander Wilson appeared in her doorway, grinning. Speaking to cats now, Doc. That's not very scientific of you. Dr. Patel's ridges flickered with amusement. On the contrary, Commander. I'm conducting an ongoing study in cross-species communication. The fact that it brings me joy is simply an efficient use of research time. As laughter filled the office, joined by Butterscotch's contented purring, Dr. Patel realized that this was perhaps her greatest discovery, that in bridging the gap between logic and emotion, between efficiency and comfort, they had found something greater than either alone could provide. They had found healing in its truest form, and it sounded remarkably like a cat's purr.